Okay, one of the first verbs that we need to learn, though, is an irregular verb. I'll call it irregular. It's not an amica verb, it's a me verb. We're going to learn about more me verbs at the end of the term. Again, most of the verbs you're learning right now are amica verbs. Luo, okay? And remember, middle-only verbs, middle-only verbs, and in oh my, okay? But they're still considered amica verbs, okay? Luo and erkomeni, those are mid-only. But an example of a me verb that is quite frequent in the Greek New Testament is the verb I am, okay? A verb of being. So you've got to learn that. So this is one of the first verbs you're going to learn. It's paradigm. So the first person singular is emi. The second singular is a. The third singular is estin. The first plural is esmen. The second plural is esta. And the third plural is asin. So emi is I am. A is you are. Estin is he, she, it is. Esmen is we are. Esta, second plural. You, plural, are. And asin is third plural. They are. Okay? This is, these verbs are often used to make a kind of copulative statement, two nominatives together, and like for instance, when Jesus comes up from the water at his baptism, the voice from heaven says, Su, you, a, ha, weos, you are the son of me, or you are my son. Okay? It describes who the subject is, and there's a predicate nominative to describe who he is. It's making it's a statement that needs a completion here. Okay? That's often how the verb I am is used in the Greek New Testament. Okay? So learn emi, a, estin, esmen, esta, and asin, so that you can recognize it. It's a me verb. It's a little bit irregular. It doesn't completely conform to the regular pattern that you're going to learn when we go over amica verbs like luo. Okay? So we're first learning the present indicative active. So the present is a present tense form. It indicates present time, but it's this imperfect aspect, which is, again, continuous, process, okay, process. It's indicative, meaning the action is asserted to be real. And finally, it's active. The subject is performing the action. So we're also going to learn the present middle. The present tense nuance is the same. The indicative nuance is the same. But the middle, again, the subject is performing the action and is affected by the action. Okay? And finally, we're going to be learning the present indicative passive. And there the subject receives the action. Okay? So let's begin by talking about the present indicative and verbal aspect. And again, the present indicative communicates both time and aspect, okay? And so that means here we are really talking about process in terms of the kind of action that's being depicted here. So what are the nuances of the present tense? There's this idea of progressive present. So the action is in process. That's the nuance of when you read the present tense in a narrative. Or other nuance is an iterative present. The action is performed repeatedly or regularly. Okay, so kind of not like a constant line, but more like a line where there's little breaks every once in a while. He's not doing it all the time, but maybe he's doing it once a week, once a day, once a month. It's done repeatedly or regularly. And lastly, there's what's called the historical narrative. Oftentimes in the Gospels, the writer will use the present tense, and that kind of confuses us because we're accustomed to being of historic narrative as being past tense. So the aorist and the imperfect tense, the past tenses, are being used in gospel writing, but every once in a while you're going to see present tense crop up. Well, how do you translate that? Should you translate it as a present tense? Oftentimes we will translate as a past event. Okay, we'll use a past tense to depict the scene. But again, all of these nuances are depending on context. What's going on in the passage that will help us to come up with the correct kind of nuance to what's happening in the verb. Okay, so this indicates present tense and voice. How does voice come up in our present tenses? Well, it comes primarily through the endings we put on the end of the verbs. So while those personal endings talk about person and number, they also reflect voice. Okay? And that's important. So active voice endings we'll get to are luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueta, luusin. And the meaning here is again an active voice. I am loosing. In the present indicative, the middle and the passive have the same ending. So for a normal omega verb, it can have middle and passive endings. So luomai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luesta, luantai. So a different set of endings. So they have person and number, but they also have a different set of endings to reflect voice. And the middle voice, we would probably best translate it here as I loose myself, or I loose for myself. Okay, so reflective or self-interest. The passive is translate I am being loosed. So how do we, a regular luo, a regular kind of omega verb, and we see a middle and passive ending on here, how do we know which is the nuance? Which is it, the middle idea or the passive idea being conveyed here? And there again, context. Context will help us know whether the author, the writer is, and also the type of verb involved, will help us to know whether this middle translation is the good one or the passive translation is the idea. Okay? But as I said earlier, there are middle-only verbs. These middle-only don't have active endings, they just have middle. And by definition, they really don't fit a kind of a passive idea here. So they will appear in the dictionary with their middle voice form. Pru omai. Okay, pru omai. And here we go. Pru omai, prue, pru etai, pru amatha, peru estha, peru ontai. And we translate them with an active idea. I am going, you are going, he or she or it is going, we are going, you all, you plural, are going, and they are going. Okay? So those middle-only verbs have these middle endings, but they're translated with an active meaning, and they appear in the dictionary like that. So you'll know right away what they are. So let's walk through the present active indicative form. Okay. First person singular is luo, just an omega, and it's translate I am loosing. Second singular is lues, epsilon iota sigma, you are loosing. Third singular is lue, he, she, it is loosing. So it doesn't talk about gender, it just talks about third person. So all these are possible in translation, but context will indicate to you the subject, whether the subject is a guy or a girl or an inanimate object. The first plural is luamen, we are loosing. And then the second plural is lueta, you, plural, you all are loosing. And the third plural is luusin, they are loosing. And you'll notice there I've got the new in brackets, and that's what's called a movable new, which means it doesn't always have to be there. The Greeks added it to make aid in pronunciation. Let's say the next word in the sentence started with a vowel. You needed a nice little stop here to move from the iota to this other vowel. So they put the movable new in there. That's not always the hard and fast rule. Sometimes you'll see a movable new in there when there's not a vowel in the next word in the sentence. It just got added there to help with pronunciation. Okay, so luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueta, luusin. You need to learn these forms so that you can know what the present active indicative looks like, what its persons are, and so when you do the exercises, practice exercises and the exercises in the book, you will be fully prepared to do parsing and analysis of verbs. Okay, let's move on to the present middle indicative. Okay, so first singular is luomai. Okay, luomai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luestha, luantai. Second singular, lue, you loose for yourself. Third singular, luetai, he, she, it looses for himself, herself, or itself. First plural is luamatha, we loose for ourselves. Second plural is luestha, you loose for yourselves. And then third plural, luantai, they loose for themselves. Okay. Now you'll notice in all of these forms you'll see a connecting vowel and an ending. Okay. That's very much in keeping with what we've seen. But this guy is a little bit different. And we'll get to the morphology on that. And the paradigm for the passive is exactly the same as the middle. So in the present indicative, the middle and the passive are exactly the same. Okay? And again, for normal omega verbs like luo, context will tell you which is which meaning is present here. So the forms are the same, but the translation's a bit different in the passive. It's not kind of self-interest or reflective action. It's passive action. I am being loosed. You are being loosed. He is being loosed. We are being loosed. You are being loosed. They are being loosed. Okay? So passive action. Someone else is doing the action toward the subject. Subject's receiving the action of the verb. Okay? So that's passive. So this is about morphology, how things are formed. So some people learn for different ways. So you can basically learn these verbs by just learning the endings. Just luo, lues, lue, luamen, lueta, luusin, luomai, lue, luetai, luamatha, luestha, luantai. But it may also be helpful to kind of see how the verb works. Okay? So the verb works by the idea of a stem, plus a connecting vowel plus a personal ending. Okay? So that's how things work in Greek. So stem plus connecting vowel for the at least the present indicative active. Okay? Okay, so what's happened here? The connecting vowel is an omicron, but it becomes an omega. What we have here is a lengthening. Okay? The omicron doesn't like to be on the end all by lonesome, so the verb compensates by lengthening him to an omega. Okay, lues. What's happening there? Second singular. It's the connecting vowel is the epsilon, and the personal ending is an iota sigma. The book points out that the real ending is a sigma iota, which has switched around for some reason, for reasons unknown. But just know that this is the completed ending. Okay. Okay. So we get a connecting vowel of an epsilon for the third singular. The ending that we see is an iota. Okay, to get to here. But the book points out that the real ending has a tau iota and the tau drops. Anyway, do you need to know that? No. Just know that that's the ending. Luomen, omicron plus men. So stem plus connective vowel plus stem, luomen. That's the first plural. Lu plus epsilon plus tau epsilon equals lueta. And finally, the third plural, lu plus omicron plus usin equals usin, lu usin. Now they point out that the actual ending here is a lu on sin, and the nu has dropped out, and the omicron lengthens to omicron upsilon. But do you need to know that? No. Just know that it's use, and the omicron plus the upsilon creates lu usin. Okay? That's the basic morphology of how the present indicative gets put together. Let's talk about the morphology of your present, middle, and passive forms. Okay? Again, the same idea. Connecting vowel plus personal ending equals luomai. The second singular, which I talked to you before, but this is a nice graphic here. That's the connecting vowel, which you really don't see. And it is linked to the ending psi. But you really don't see that ending. You don't see lu as psi. Why? Because the sigma drops out between these two vowels. And this combo leads to that, which leads to that. So that's the ending you get. But everything else is pretty straightforward. Lu, the third singular is lu tai. Lu mtha. Lu sta. Lu ontai. Okay. Okay. And the nice thing about the present indicative is the middle and the passive have the same endings, and makes it easier for memorization, really. And so that's the bonus point here. You've got two paradigms to memorize this week. The present indicative active and the present indicative middle or passive. Okay, next, I think we're getting to the end here. We want to talk about parsing. So I talked about parsing nouns, and now we're parsing verbs. So what are the key pieces of information that we need for parsing verbs? We need to know the lexical form. The lexical form is what is found in the dictionary, and it's the first person singular present indicative. So, luo, ilus, blepo is I see, lego, is I say. Okay, that's all first person singular present indicative forms, and that's how they appear in the dictionary. Remember, again, middle only will have not the omega, but there'll be oh my in your dictionary. Okay. Tense, we want to talk about the tense of the verbs. And for now, the present tense is going to be what you parse. So this week, if you write present for everything, when I quiz you on this, you'll get free marks. Present tense. But we will be learning the imperfect soon, and then the future, and then the aorist, and then the perfect and pluperfect. But those are the possibilities for tense or tense forms. You'll be asked to parse what voice it is. So is it active voice, or is it middle or passive? Okay, so luo, active, lu omai, middle or passive. Talk about mood. For now, the indicative for a while. The indicative is the mood you put down. We'll learn about these other moods much later on. Person, again, you must know whether it's first, second, or third person. I, you, or they, or he, or she, or it, or we, you all, or they. And then number, is it singular or plural? And finally, you need to be able to translate. What is the meaning of the inflected form? How would you translate its meaning? Taking all this information into consideration. So those are the pieces of information that you'll need to provide when parsing a Greek verb. So here are some examples. Lu-usin. Okay, lu-usin. What's its lexical form? It's the first person singular present indicative form. It's lu. Luo. So what's going on here? What set of endings is this? Again, you can cycle in however you want and figure this out. Just because it's patterned this way doesn't mean you need to process the verb in this way. But again, we're dealing with present tense. We know it's present tense because that's what we're learning today. Usin. Again, what endings are these? Are these the active or the middle passive endings? Well, they're the active. Again, the mood is a given. You'll be dealing with indicative verbs for quite a while. Lu-usin, go through the paradigm. Luo, lues, lue, luomen, lueta, lu-usin. So it's happening on the plural side of things, and it's third, plural. So that tells you that they, plural, are loosing. So you get the they from the person and number idea. You get the loosing from knowing what the lexical form, and you're translating as present tense and active. Okay? They are loosing. Peru-a. Okay? Peru-a. And its lexical form is peru-omai. So right away you know that this is a mid only. It's a middle only. So that should tell you how to translate it. Okay, Peru, it's a present. The voice is middle. Okay, you're calling it a middle because it got middle voice endings here. Okay, its lexical form is middle only. It's indicative, so go through the paradigm. Luomai, lue, luetai, luomatha, luesta, luontai. So you know it was on the singular side of things, and it was the second one. Okay, second singular. So it's lu-a from luomai, and it's a middle only, so you know it's got this active meaning. You are going. And finally, echomen is from the verb echo, which means I have or I hold. Okay? Echomen. Present. Active. These are the active. There's an active form here. It's indicative. Echomen. Go through your paradigm. Let's go through it with echo. Echo. ace, ake. So that's singular side, first person, and first, second, and third. Let's flip over the plural side. Ekhamen, eketa, ekusen. So that was the first plural form, and it's we have. So parsing. So what I want you to do is do the practice exercises that I mentioned on my little handout. They include examples of parsing. They also include some translation of using some words that you know already. So those little translation bits that I've suggested to you on the practice exercises will train you both in verbs and in nouns. So be aware of the nouns that you're using and their cases. So you'll be translating the cases as part of the verb. And finally, I have a little section where I want you to translate some English phrases into Greek using the vocab that you know. So hopefully those practice exercises will set you up for the class. And again, keep noting any questions that you have about what I've talked about today and bring them to class so that we can sort them all out. So until next time, this is your professor, Jim Knight, Jimmy the Greek, signing off.